Have you ever wanted to build custom shelving, but you don't quite know how? Maybe you're too intimidated, you don't know where to start. Well, guess what? I'm gonna teach you how to do it, the material you'll need, and the steps to take. I'll teach you how to build your own shelving as well, and you can get all the materials just like I did at RONA. Right now I'm building my house, so I'm going back and forth to RONA all the time, getting the materials that I need for the projects that I take on. I love the selections of products that they have, and they've got the materials that I need to tackle the projects that I'm doing. The first thing you want to do is determine how many shelves you want. I'm going to start by measuring the width of my closet. So I already know I have 18 inches by 42 inches wide. And since a piece of plywood is 8 feet, I can get at least 4 shelves out of that. Now here's the tricky part, and this is a technique that I want to teach you. Since the plywood is done in layers, if you cut it and just see the face of it, you're going to see the different layers of ply. I'm going to teach you how to make a nosing from the plywood so that the grain continues, so when you paint it, you see no layers and it looks like solid wood. A great way to find out how much material you're going to need is to first measure the area that you want to build. I know that I want to build 18 by 42 inch shelves. Now I'm going to round up to 48 and 24 inches, so that makes it a nice 4 foot by 2 foot number. 4 feet by 2 feet is 8 square feet. In one sheet of plywood, there are 32 square feet. So if you see where I'm getting at, it's how many times that goes into this sheet of plywood. 8, 16, 24, 32. So I already know that I can definitely get my 4 shelves out of one sheet of plywood. Since they're smaller than 4 feet and 2 feet, I know I'll have some offcut and a little bit of room to play, but you want to be very careful when you're measuring anyway. This is a good piece of sanded plywood, and I plan on painting this. So this is going to turn out really nice in the end. But you can see, this is a 3/4 inch piece. You can see all those different layers of ply that are laminated together in order to make this plywood. So on the face of my shelves, I'm going to have a nosing. And how I'm going to do that, I'm going to start by ripping a 45, just like that. And then from there, you're going to rip another 45. Now that will give me a nice thick nosing for my shelf. This is going to be my bottom piece. From there, I want a nice thick nose. This is going to be my nosing here. And once I rip this down, I'm essentially going to leave this piece here. This is going to be an offcut. And I'm going to fold this piece attached to this piece, which then I will have one more 45-degree rip. And that will be my shelf. So out of this material, I have about 3.5 inches. Knowing that my shelves are going to be about 18 inches, that still gives me plenty of room to make the rest of my cuts. Now you can see I have my shelf, so this is my piece of plywood still at 8 feet. I'm going to end up cutting this down after the fact. I find, and here's a great tip, that when gluing it together, it's easier and takes less time when you glue it as one long piece versus multiple individual pieces. Now the great part about gluing this together is your clamp is painter's tape. So you're going to use painter's tape, and what you're going to do is put the painter's tape underneath the ply, and then you're going to rest your next piece on it, and then your next piece on top of that, and you're just going to fold it together and glue it. This here, so this is going to act as my nosing. So you remember I said I'm going to have a face for this because you can see the plies are here. So when I have a 45 degrees and a 45 degrees, that's going to make a 90-degree angle. I'm going to carefully place my first piece. You can see we've got 2 45s on it, and that's going to wrap up from my shelf, wrap around the back. Here's an excellent tip from a carpenter. If you don't have any clamps, one of the best clamps that we use, painter's tape and wood glue. I'm going to rest my backer piece just behind that miter because this piece is going to rest on it. I'm just going to do this nice and slow. Now we're going to go along and we're going to feel that corner. A lot of things with carpentry is based on feel. You can feel the imperfections. And the more you work with your hands, the better you become at feeling those imperfections. Anytime we're going to use a screw in wood, we want to pre-drill our screws. When we're trying to hide the screws, we want to use a countersink bit. So this is a countersink bit. It's going to pre-drill the screw, but it's also going to use this auger head to make room for the screw head to sink in so we can fill the screw after. You can see I have my side rails, my back rails, all anchored to studs. Next step will be to cut my shelving to size, but because I've glued it, I've taped it, it's clamped. I'm gonna let it sit overnight and I'll come back in the morning, cut it to size and fill all the holes. Make sure you give your glue enough time to dry and strengthen properly before you start cutting it and putting stress on it. I've let the glue set overnight. Now let's check on our nosing. Here's the tricky part. When drywall is done, the corners are mudded. Typically, that will throw the walls a little bit out of square. So I'm gonna use a framing square to help me measure out just how wide I have to taper those cuts because I want a nice tight fit. 41 and 5/8. Put the long side at the back. Make sure that's tight against the wall. 3/16 of an inch. Oh man, looks like the same thing. Even if your framing is square, it's very rare that your drywall doesn't affect that. So here's a great tip. When you are measuring for things like interior shelving, check your walls for square because those corners or anywhere that drywall compound is added, that's gonna build areas up and change those measurements just a bit. Now that I have my back, I know the back of my shelves are square. So this is going to be what I'm gonna call my work line, my square line that I'm going to pull my measurements off of. Shelf 1 is going to be 41 and 5/8. The drywall changes things a little bit. So I'm gonna mark here knowing that that's my square line. So that's where I'm gonna start from the back. And then because the drywall changes the square line, I'm gonna make one small mark at the top here. And knowing that, okay, that would be perfectly square. I have to add on my left side 3/16 of an inch because it's out of square. Another tip is whenever you're using your tape measure to mark something, especially if it's small, I don't use the tip, I typically use the 1. Put my 1 on a line and then I add 1 inch to whatever measurement I need. I will leave my tape measure on the 1. 41 and 5/8 is the measurement that I need. And since I'm on the 1, I have to add 1 inch to that measurement. So now I need 42 and 5/8. Carefully mark that there. Now I have my next square line. Add a mark there, add a mark there. I need 3/16 added here. So technically, what I'm building is a shelf that's out of square. However, because I'm fitting it into a new space or a space with drywall that's typically not going to be perfectly square, I have to build to that. So you want to make sure that you use a framing square or some sort of square to pull those measurements from to get an accurate, nice fitting shelf. Here's a perfect example of the nosing, and this is how I created it out of plywood. You can see I've got miter there, and then I've used this backer block to help keep this square and support it when I glued it up. Go. And just like that, our linens closet has shelving in it. It's strong, it's sturdy, and it looks good. All from one sheet of plywood, wood glue, and painter's tape, and I got it all at RONA.